What's happening, everybody? On today's show, a ton of roster movement already in the SEC with guys declaring for the draft like Spencer Rattler and big names entering the transfer portal. KJ Jefferson on the move, and the SEC has a chance at another Heisman winner in LSU's Jayden Daniels. We'll talk with Cody Worsham as he makes the case for Jayden to take home the hardware. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And shout out to our everydayers who keep coming back, checking us out each and every day. We've got plenty to discuss. Let's do it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over at South Carolina as Spencer Rattler announced his decision to move on to the NFL. He officially put out the statement saying, I will be declaring for the NFL draft. It's been a dream of mine since I was a little kid. Cannot wait for the chance to turn my dream into reality. He finishes his South Carolina career with a record of 13-12, threw for over 6,000 yards, 37 touchdowns, 20 interceptions. His best game, of course, came a year ago with the major upset against Tennessee and then beat Clemson a week later. Certainly a memorable stretch. Played very well against Notre Dame in the bowl game. They just couldn't pull that one out, but he will be moving on. So Spencer Rattler, there was a chance he could have stayed and played one more year, had that extra year of eligibility, but the guy who was, all-everything recruit, was, went to Oklahoma, was featured on, a Netflix documentary, and, there was some thought he was like the Heisman favorite when he got to going into the second year at Oklahoma. So, wish him best of luck. We've had Spencer on the show a couple times over the years, and certainly wish him the best of luck at the next level. Now, his teammate, wide receiver / running back / quarterback, Dakereon Joyner, another friend of the show, he's been on with us several times over the years. He officially announced he's heading to the NFL. Posted to social media, said he'll pursue his childhood dream of entering the NFL draft. So South Carolina losing a lot of seniors and losing Spencer Rattler and DK Joyner, both heading off to the NFL. Now, some other South Carolina news for Shane Beamer. South Carolina reportedly going to lose a couple more quarterbacks to the transfer portal. According to the Big Spur, 2 scholarship quarterbacks, redshirt freshman Tanner Bailey and redshirt sophomore Colton Gauthier will enter the portal. So that leaves South Carolina with just 2 quarterbacks on the roster. Luke Doty, who, of course, started some games a couple years ago, and the freshman Lenore Sellers, who I think a lot of fans are high on and want to see what he can do. So tough go there. You got to expect South Carolina is going to be looking in the portal. And could they be looking for, the other big story from the SEC yesterday, KJ Jefferson. According to 24/7 Sports, this is Chris Hummer. KJ Jefferson expected to enter the transfer portal. Jefferson has spent the last 5 seasons at Arkansas. Still has 1 more year of eligibility due to he redshirted and you got the COVID year. So Jefferson, of course, a very good career there at Arkansas, but some solid seasons with Kendall Briles as the OC, but not so much with Dan Enos this past year, totaling just 2,100 yards, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He did post after this news came out on his Instagram story saying, I haven't made my decision yet. So that's why we say maybe KJ Jefferson entering the portal, but there is some buzz that South Carolina would make a lot of sense for KJ Jefferson given his connection with offense coordinator Dole Loggins. So something to watch there certainly, but it would answer a lot of questions. It would help. It would put KJ in a good spot for his final year of college football, and it would certainly answer a big need for Shane Beamer in South Carolina. So certainly a story we'll keep a watch on and see what happens there. Now, as we mentioned, SEC quarterbacks, there's a lot of things to keep an eye on. These are some names to keep an eye on for quarterbacks in the portal outside of the SEC. Duke quarterback Riley Leonard has entered the portal. On 3 Sports saying that Notre Dame and Auburn would be considered top options for Riley Leonard. Coastal Carolina quarterback Grayson McCall, he entered the portal. He was connected to Auburn a year ago. He entered the portal then and then went back to school at Coastal Carolina, but there was some smoke there with Auburn then. Kansas State quarterback Will Howard on 3 Sports reporting that Auburn, Kentucky, and Missouri could all be in play for Will Howard. And then Miami quarterback Tyler Van Dyke is in the portal. I was looking at his recruiting profile. Did have an offer from Kentucky coming out of high school. So Kentucky's going to lose Devin Leary. You know, could they be in play for Miami's Tyler Van Dyke and Kansas State's Will Howard? We also heard potentially, you know, Will Rogers at Mississippi State could be on Kentucky's radar. And then for Auburn, look, Peyton Thorne, love you, but he's just not getting the job done. He and Robbie Ashford. So obviously Duke quarterback Riley Leonard would be a big upgrade, and Grayson McCall if they want to try to go down that path again to try to get him. So those are just some names to keep an eye on here over these next couple of weeks to months in the SEC because those are guys from other conferences that could end up coming in. We saw, like we said, Devin Leary came over from NC State this past year. We saw, Graham Mertz came over from Wisconsin down to Florida. So certainly possibility we see some guys. Now, one guy who's been playing in the SEC the last several years of his career, Max Johnson, not only did he enter the portal on Sunday, he's already found a new home. Max Johnson is going to play for Mack Brown at North Carolina. So Drake May, their quarterback, he's heading off to the NFL draft. So Johnson, the former LSU and A&M quarterback, is headed to North Carolina. Was productive this year. Ended up having to start a lot of games for Texas A&M after the injury to Connor Wegman. But son of Brad Johnson, the former Super Bowl winner, wish Max the best of luck there over at North Carolina. Max Johnson now at UNC. Over at Florida, some news over there. Max Brown, their quarterback, intends to enter the transfer portal. Brown will have 3 years of eligibility remaining. He started Florida's Week 13 game against Florida State after Graham Mertz suffered that season-ending collarbone injury. But Brown didn't see much playing time this season outside of that. So we will see what happens there. He was a 3-star prospect out of the Tulsa area. Florida now will wait a decision on Graham Mertz. They really need Graham Mertz to come back. He has 1 more year of eligibility remaining. They did not sign a quarterback from the high school ranks last year. Now they do have in this upcoming recruiting class a commitment from 5-star prospect DJ Lagway out of the Houston area. But look, they don't want to play DJ Lagway right away, I don't think. It would be a really nice transition to have Graham Mertz come back for 1 more year, so we'll keep an eye on that. Other Florida news, they are losing a wide receiver, Caleb Douglas, to the transfer portal. He's a sophomore, started 2 games his freshman year, started the first 5 games of this year before suffering a season-ending injury. Had 11 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown before his injury. He will have 2 full seasons of eligibility remaining, having not used a red shirt. Florida also losing defensive lineman Will Norman and sophomore defensive back Kamari Wilson to the transfer portal. Wilson played in just 1 game this year, but those are some guys entering the portal from Florida. Now, one name to keep an eye on, I'm the one starting this rumor. Stanford running back E.J. Smith entered the transfer portal. Why am I even mentioning this? That's the son of Emmitt Smith. Wouldn't it be awesome if E.J. Smith ended up transferring over to Florida? I don't know. I'm just saying. Heard some rumblings that maybe Trevor Etienne could hit the portal and maybe he wants to go back to Louisiana and he transfers to LSU. That opens the door for Emmitt Smith's son, E.J., to go play at Florida. Not likely. I know E.J. was very proud of getting his degree at Stanford and all that, but wants to go follow in Dad's footsteps. That'd be a lot of fun. All right, other news over Kentucky. Kenneth Horsey, offensive lineman, he declared for the NFL draft. He's been with Kentucky since 2018, used his last season of eligibility this past year. So he is heading off to the NFL. And some other Kentucky news here. They got some massive news this past week. Kentucky did as Eli Cox announced he is coming back for his final year of eligibility. He announced on social media, he said, "I'm excited to announce I'm returning to Kentucky for my 6th and final season." We had Eli Cox on the show back at SEC Media Days, so congrats to him. Kentucky tight end Isaiah Cummings, he announced on Instagram he is entering the transfer portal as a graduate student. He's been with the Wildcats for 4 seasons. So we'll see where Isaiah Cummings ends up. Some news over at Vanderbilt, Clark Lee. Well, before we get to Clark Lee, Vanderbilt running back Patrick Smith, he has announced he's entering the portal. 1 season of eligibility left. Ran for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns for Vandy this past year. Also, Vandy defensive end Nate Clifton announced he will enter the portal after 5 seasons in Nashville. He will have 1 season of eligibility using his COVID exemption. Now, some news out of Vanderbilt as they parted ways last night with offensive coordinator Joey Lynch, and they will also be making a move on the defensive staff with Nick Howell, his defensive coordinator. He was demoting him. There is an avenue for Nick Howell to stay on the staff in some capacity. Clark Lee announcing he will be his own defensive coordinator next year. So probably got a talking to from the administration of Vandy going, Clark, these last couple of years have not been great. Clark Lee going, well, if my butt's on the line next year, I want to be my own defensive coordinator. So Clark Lee will be his own DC at Vanderbilt next year, and they have fired offense coordinator Joey Lynch as Vandy ranked last in the SEC in total offense and 13th in scoring offense, averaging just 22 points per game. Over Mississippi State, SEC veteran assistant Will Friend will not be retained on Jeff Lebby's staff. Prior to his Mississippi State stint, Friend also coached at Georgia, Tennessee, and Auburn. So you got to think another SEC school is going to pick up Will Friend. He just likes coaching in the Southeastern Conference. Jeff Lebby is expected to retain D-line coach David Turner, according to Matt Zenitz. Meanwhile, Mike Elko coming back to A&M. Tuesday, he announced that offensive line coach Steve Adazio, assistant Damian Craig, and Bobby Petrino would not be retained. Now, of course, Bobby Petrino, the news is already out that he is officially back at Arkansas, heading to go be Sam Pittman's OC. Details of his contract came out Wednesday. According to Pete Thamel, Petrino's salary will be $1.35 million, will increase to $1.5 million for the next 2 seasons. And he'll have certain provisions in there, bonuses and all of that. Bobby Petrino, in an interview he did yesterday, talked about learning Jimbo Fisher's offense. He said, Jimbo wanted to keep his terminology, and I didn't sleep for months. It was hard. I was studying it every night, trying to figure it out. So it's kind of funny to hear that. Jimbo put Bobby Petrino through the ringer, saying, you better learn all my plays if you want to come over here. And a few other player notes here. South Carolina wide receiver Xavier Leggett from South Carolina accepted his invitation to the Senior Bowl. And some other guys entering the portal. Georgia linebacker Darius Smith, Kentucky wide receiver DeKel Crowdis, Mizzou backup quarterback Dylan Label, and Mizzou tight end Max Wisner all entering the portal. And there you have it. You are all caught up on everything going around the conference. There's a ton happening. So thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, our conversation with Cody Worsham, making the case for Jayden Daniels to win the Heisman. That's coming your way here in just a sec. This episode presented to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Look, passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, whatever it is you need for your vehicle, maybe even wiper blades. eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And they've got that eBay guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. And with eBay Motors, you'll be burning rubber, not cash. They got all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Go keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. That's eBay Motors. Rolling along here, Locked On SEC, and Chris Gordy here with you, and of course joined by Cody Worsham. Happy to be joined by this guy, Associate AD and Chief Brand Officer over at LSU. You can follow him on Twitter at Cody Worsham. Cody, what's going on, man? Welcome in.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me. Good to be with you and to catch up with you.
Absolutely. So, Cody, the Heisman ballots have been mailed out. 870 media members currently holding ballots in their hands to vote for who they think should win the Heisman. The deadline to submit is Monday, but really votes could probably be submitted for late Friday night after the Pac-12 title game will be played between the other two frontrunners, Oregon's Bo Nix and Washington's Michael Penix. But Jayden Daniels, one of the most electrifying players in the SEC this year in all of the country. And I know you and a lot of the folks at LSU have put a lot of time and resources into making a case for Jayden Daniels to win the Heisman. I guess let's just kind of rewind a little bit to the start of the season. I know he was among the Heisman favorites, but give me your impression of what you thought Jayden could do this year and what played out.
Yeah, I think with Jayden, it really started last year. I mean, I think last year when he did what he did against Alabama, we kind of took a step back as a department and said, all right, this is a guy that's got a chance to do something special at some point in his career. So I think we started thinking about it then. You know, if we were ever to have a Heisman campaign for Jayden, what would it look like? What would it feel like? And then obviously coming into this year when, you know, after he'd made the decision to come back last year, we kind of knew it was something we needed to be thinking about. And then he got off to the start that he did. And so we sat down in October and we said, all right, it's time. Like, let's start talking about this thing. How do we want it to look? What's the message going to be? So we got Michael Bonnet and Brandon Barrio and our entire football creative team in a room and kind of started mapping out what that looked like. The good thing, you know, with anytime you're doing a Heisman campaign, right? Like the player's the one doing all the work. Our job is to just give voice to what they've accomplished and to put that out there for the people to see. Jayden's made that very, very easy on us. You know, we're not trying to sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves, to quote Tommy Boy. You know, we're selling something that's pretty easy to sell because of how good he's been this year. So that's it's a credit to him for making it easy on us.
Let's talk about what you guys have launched. The website is thatkidjayden.com, and I think it's a really cool interactive website that kind of lets you scroll down and really, you know, not just watch the highlights from this league year, because you can watch all these great plays he made, but really the statistics stand out, just how ridiculous his stats were as the season went along. Yeah,
you know, the point of reference that I have for this is the 2019 season with Joe Burrow. And, you know, that year, I don't know that we mounted an official Heisman campaign of any kind, really. There were no other contenders, really, for the trophy. And that was a really strong class that year. You had Chase Young and Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. I mean, really good players, great collegiate careers. But Joe was he was on a different level. This year, there's more competition for that award. And so I think what we did was, all right, how do we make the case in every way possible for Jayden? So thatkidjayden.com was kind of the quantitative case for Jayden. It was the numbers case, right? It was, you know, rather than for Joe, for example, this wasn't necessarily part of the Heisman campaign, but in 2019, I went to Athens, Ohio with Matt Tornquist. We did a video series. I wrote a 10,000 word story. We did an hour-and-a-half long podcast narrative, just kind of telling people what Joe's story was. With Jayden, it wasn't about writing a 10,000 word story. It's how do we make this quantitative case and put these numbers in a way that people can look at them and respond to them the same way that I respond to them when I look at them, which is, wow, I can't believe this kid is that good. I can't believe that he's been that productive. And so our partners at WMT who partner with us on all our technology stuff, I basically went to them and said, hey, you know, we'd like to make a website. What can you do? A couple hours later, they put together this template that I'm scrolling through that looks a lot like what you're looking at on thatkidjayden.com. And I'm like, this is perfect, right? Now, as a storyteller and a writer and a brander, I can go in there and fill in all the words that I want to. I can add the pictures and videos and stuff that I want to. It made it really easy for us to do that. It was, you know, built for mobile. It was built for desktop. All I had to do was, you know, that was kind of the canvas that they gave me. And then I just got to, you know, work with Michael, work with Todd Police, work with Brandon, work with Lindsey Thompson and our whole team that has all these creative assets and figure out how to best put them on there. So it's a cool website. I agree. And I take very, very little credit for it because it was put in place by our partners and all the assets were built by our team. And then Jayden was the one doing all the hard work on the field to give us some good numbers to put out there.
I think the website obviously caught a lot of people's eye, and if you hadn't gone to it yet, go check it out at thatkidjayden.com. But one of the things that kind of went viral the last couple of days was you put together a graph of just kind of like a spreadsheet, putting the top three guys together: Jayden Daniels, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix. And I think that was really eye-popping when you said, look, he leads in 25 of the 30 categories listed here. I mean, it's crazy to look at that stat sheet and say he's not the front runner.
Yeah, that was the same thing, right? Like our job, the reason that LSU employs us is to promote our student athletes and our programs. And so we're sitting there, okay, the big story right now for football is Jayden Daniels. How do we promote him as best as possible? And so I said, look, the case for Jayden is simple. It's his production. It's what he's done on the field, right? Other candidates, it might be that they're on a team with a better record or they've, whatever. But I said, okay, but let's look at the objective facts. If we did kind of those blind resume things, right? It's sort of that March Madness blind resume time of year. If we did a blind resume, what would it look like? So I went through the basic stats from CFBstats.com. I went on Pro Football Focus and pulled some, average distance to target and big time throw percentage and, all these other sort of advanced metrics that I like to play with, and tried to make that compelling case, right? And so put that out there, and it has gone pretty crazy viral and seeing people share it and stuff. But I think it just shows you the power of, when you take out, and again, I'm a narrative guy. That's my background, and that's what I work in and all that stuff. But you take out all the narrative, you strip away all the narrative, and you just look at the data. The case is strong enough on its own. Jayden has done it. He's produced it. He's outperformed every player in college football, and it speaks for itself.
More with Cody Worsham in just a second, but want to remind you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. It is the most fun you guys are going to have with 25 times your money this football season, and you can even play during basketball season as well. You just select 2 or more players, pick more than or less than on their projected stats, and you place your entry. It is that simple. Go to your phone right now. Download the app Prize Picks. They've got a reboot policy, so your entries even stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. So for football and basketball games, if you got a player who exits the game in the first half, doesn't come back in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Nobody else does that. Go test your skills at Prize Picks throughout this season. You can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. It is that easy. They got quick withdrawals there, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go check them out. They even now offer Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account throughout this football season. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use our promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use our promo code LockedOnCollege. First deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy.
Continue our conversation with Cody Worsham of LSU, Associate AD and Chief Brand Officer. And Cody, as we look at what Jayden Daniels did this year and making the case for him for the Heisman, rushing for 1,134 yards, leads the country 8.4 yards per carry. He's first in the SEC in passing yards, second in the SEC in rushing behind Mizzou's Cody Schrader. That's a full-time running back. It was awesome. But this isn't hyperbole, but people I've talked to literally comparing him as a runner to the likes of Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick. I mean, that's not hyperbole, right? Like him as a runner this year was phenomenal. He was unstoppable.
Yeah, that's the differentiator. Like we could, that chart that I laid out with 25 of the 30 categories, like if you looked at just the passing stats, he's still the best. Like he's still got the best passing numbers. He's got a NCAA record for passer efficiency right now. Like he's the best thrower of the ball in the country. But the legs are what differentiates him even more. There's a number of stats, right? 10.7 yards per touch, period. He's a first down every time he touches the ball. One of my favorite rushing stats, I don't think it made that. It may have made that chart. I can't remember. There was 30 of them on there. I can't remember them all. But it was missed tackles forced when he's as a runner. He's got 47. The next two guys have 2 and 1. Like he gets in the open field, he makes people miss. He has more yards after contact, like 509 or something like that, over 500 yards after contact than the other two guys combined, period, before or after contact. So he's not only the best thrower of the football, he's the best running quarterback in the country. He's also probably the best runner in the country when you look at, like you said, the yards per carry up against running back. So I think Lamar Jackson is probably the most apt comparison, but he's a much more advanced and polished passer of the ball than Lamar was. Lamar was probably a little more dynamic with his legs, but he's 99% of what Lamar was as a runner, and he's a more advanced passer. And, we're talking about the running thing. I think where Jayden has really, and it's harder to quantify this, I think where he's really grown this year is as a processor of the game. Last year, his critics would say he doesn't go to his third read. He takes too long to make a decision. He spent a lot of time in the film room this offseason. He spent a lot of time with virtual reality headsets. He's processing at an elite speed. He's seeing the field so well. His decision-making has been unbelievable. He's going through his reads, going through his progressions. We saw something similar with Joe Burrow from 2018 to 2019. And I think there's probably – this would be more of a deep dive, but I bet if you looked at a rep threshold and the number of reps a guy has had at the collegiate level, at some point there's this sort of processing breakthrough. If you remember Joe early in 2018, some of his critics said the same thing, right? He's not seeing the field well. He's holding on to the ball too long. And then it kind of clicked for him the last 4 games of that 2018 season, the UCF game. And then 2019, he was the best quarterback between the ears that college football has ever seen. Jayden is doing some similar things with his processing, and then he adds the legs that Joe could absolutely do things with his legs. But I would always say that Joe would kind of beat you with his brain first, and then his arm second, his legs third. Jayden's kind of a combination of he'll beat you with his arm, he'll beat you with his legs, and this year he's really added the brain to the mix, and he's just a complete quarterback.
It's just crazy what he's been able to do. I remember talking to people at LSU in 19 saying, look, mark it down. We will never see another quarterback as productive as Joe Burrow was. And I mean, here we are, a guy who has put up almost, very similar numbers in so many different categories just a few years later. Talking with Cody Worsham. Cody, a lot of talk on how many losses. We've seen guys like RG3, Tebow, Caleb Williams, Manziel, guys like that have won the Heisman with multiple team losses. But I think strength of schedule should play into it. And when I saw Michael Barnett say LSU has played the nation's second toughest schedule, and Jayden led LSU with 109 drives, 66 of those ended in touchdowns. So that's 60%. 76% of those drives ended in scoring points. Look, you hate to bring one guy down to bring another one up, but Oregon's played the 66th ranked schedule, and even Bo Nix hasn't led as many scoring drives as Jayden Daniels has. It's one of those things where like you hate to tear down somebody else, but you just have to do that to show how ridiculous what Jayden has done this year against such a tough schedule.
Yeah, and we've been very intentional, and we always will be this way. We're not going to make the case against someone else. We're going to make the case for our guy. Bo Nix has been awesome this year. Like my memory of Bo Nix, I have a lot of bad memories of Bo Nix. I remember him coming in here a couple of years ago when he was with Auburn, and he had an incredible touchdown where he just kind of scrambled around in the pocket for forever and made a play. He scrambled that night like unlike any quarterback I've ever seen, and visiting quarterback in Tiger Stadium. Bo Nix is awesome. He's had a really, really good year. But I think you can make the case for Jayden in a way that, maybe when you're comparing strength of schedule, for example, there are some stark differences. But that's not a knock against Bo. That's a testament to how good Jayden has been. And you're right, Michael. I think Team Rankings has this as the number 2 schedule. I think ESPN FBI has LSU as the number 7 schedule. Really, really difficult haul. How many teams in the top 15 in the SEC of the CFP? I mean, you've got Alabama, you've got Georgia, you got Missouri, you got Ole Miss, you got LSU. It's the toughest conference in college football, and he's been able to produce consistently against every single team, whether it was Alabama, even though he got knocked out early of that game. He had like 160 rushing yards in that game. He looked phenomenal in that game. And I think when you have the conversation about team records, again, this is where it's important to look at historical context. There's been 17 guys from teams with 3 or more losses that have won the Heisman. It's not unprecedented for this to happen. It's not the award to the best player on the best team. If that were the case, an LSU Tiger would have won it in 2007 or 2011. It's to the best player in college football. And no question, when you look at the numbers, when you watch the tape, when you evaluate everything, Jayden has been that guy this year. And the objective measures say that. And look, I'm the subjective guy. I work for LSU, right? I'm biased. So that's why I have to strip it all away and say, just look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers. Look at the production. Look at who he's done it against, how consistently he's done it, how elite, explosive, efficient he's been, how unprecedented he's been. It's been incredible to watch it in person and to see the kind of season he's had.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, Friday night we will see the Pac-12 championship. It is a rematch of Oregon and Washington, and frankly, it is the other 2 guys that are the Heisman front runners. And I've had some people say, barring something absolutely magical on Friday night, that Jayden should be the guy. And I tend to agree. I just, looking at it objectively as best I can, barring something absolutely out of this world Friday night, encapsulating the season we've seen, it's got to be full picture. Jayden has done something that nobody else has done in college football.
Yeah, I think what will happen is, after the game is played on Friday, we can update the spreadsheets and we can update the numbers and we can look at everything. And I think Jayden's still going to, pound for pound, have the best resume of any quarterback in the country, of any player in the country. And I think it's important to remember that, yes, playing in a big game, that should be accounted for. I'm not saying that shouldn't count at all, but I still think that when you look at, no matter what happens on Friday, when you look at the totality of the season, when you look at the production, not only this year, but the production historically, how Jayden's numbers compare to past Heisman winners, I think the case makes itself. I mean, he's going to end up with a better passer efficiency than any player to ever win the Heisman because it's an NCAA record. He's going to end up with more yards per game than any player to ever win the Heisman. He's going to end up with only second to Joe Burrow in scoring for every Heisman winner. So when you're talking about a per game average. So, it's not just that he's the clear-cut Heisman winner for me this year. I mean, if you stack him up against the last 15, 20 guys to win the Heisman, heck, maybe all of them, he's got a resume to be as good, if not better than all of those guys. That's just how good he's been this year. And so really, no matter what happens Friday, that doesn't change. What happens Friday is going to affect how people look at, Bo Nix or Michael Penix. But Jayden's made his case. I think it's a very strong case. And now he can sit back and enjoy the college football like everybody else.
Yeah, and then people bring up him not playing this weekend, but he did save his best for last. I mean, the Texas A&M was one of the best defenses in the country a week ago, and not only what he did, but rallying late and leading his team to a victory, I thought was another feather in the cap. One more for you, Cody, before we let you run. Make a case for Malik Neighbors for the Bolitnikoff, because look, Marvin Harrison Jr., I get it. He's been phenomenal. He's been right up there, but Malik leads the country in receiving yards and a lot of other statistical categories, and he has as good a case as anybody. And I said this week, if Marvin Harrison Jr.'s name was Brian Jones, would he be getting as much love because of the dad and the pedigree? But Malik has been phenomenal.
Well, same thing. I made the same exact spreadsheet that I made for Jayden, I made for Malik, obviously with receiver stats and not quarterback stats, but he leads the country in receptions. He leads the country in receiving yards. He's got 14 touchdowns, which among the three Bolitnikoff finalists is tied for the most. One of the interesting things on that chart was contested catches, right? And so someone pointed out in the comments when I posted that, like, it's one of the few categories he doesn't lead in. I think he leads in 16 of the 20 categories that I posted. That's one of the ones he doesn't lead in. And one of the responses was, yeah, because he gets open all the time. And so he's not having to make a contested catch. But yards after catch, yards after contact, he's been the most dynamic receiver in the country. So I think the one thing I haven't done with him is stack up his resume to every other player that's won the Bolitnikoff before. But, like, if you put him next to Jamar Chase in 2019, again, do the blind resume test, Malik's going to outduel most of the receivers who've won the award and certainly the rest of the field this year. So, I would think that Heisman, yeah, there's going to be a little narrative to the Heisman vote just because of there's so many voters and there's so much attention on it. It's going to get infused in there. I would think with Bolitnikoff and awards like that, it should strictly be, what have you produced? How have you done it against? Who have you done it against? Because it's the same thing. It's the same argument with Jayden and the strength of schedule. LSU's got that, and Malik's got that in his favor too. Now, Ohio State's played a tougher schedule than I think than Oregon for sure, and they're probably closer to where LSU is. But the consistency with Malik, I mean, every game has been 80-plus yards basically. He hasn't had a 30-yard game. He hasn't had a 40-yard game. Every game has been 80 yards and a touchdown, it feels like. So the consistency, the explosiveness, the physicality, Malik's been unbelievable, and I think he absolutely deserves the award.
Cody, great stuff as always, man. Folks, you follow Cody on Twitter at Cody Worsham, and of course the website thatkidjayden.com. And I assume you and a lot of folks from Baton Rouge will be making that trip up to New York in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, looking forward to getting back up there. Hadn't been in this capacity since 19. That was a great trip and a fun trip in the end of a very long week. So hopefully we're ending the next weekend in New York City with the same celebration that we did after Joe won the award.
It's going to be a lot of fun to see how this plays out. Cody, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, that's it for Locked On SEC. Join us tomorrow for more conversation going all around the conference.